It is the Joker of the deadly trump card quartet and whose emblem is the spade. It is TJO00 First Ace, with a kit of field control, double force control, biped legs, and the leg ability of shape memory, which equalizes total HP across all parts when charging Medaforce, and this also includes restoring broken ones at also the cost of the equalizing of HP. Now, much like the other three members of her quartet, First Ace is also packing a rather dangerous kit. Even at first glance may not seem like a lot, but in the right hands she can be just as much of an interruption fighter as anyone else can be. Field Control is a support-based skill that will cap the heavy limit of all allies' legs to 3 if they are on compatible terrains, which makes it very handy to use to help kind of equalize the terrain imbalance on certain terrains where, say, certain leg types are required. Force Control is essentially a shooting version of Medaforce Seal, which basically put, when attacking a target, it will prevent them from being able to unleash Medaforce. Now they can still charge Medaforce and use attacks that are reliant on it, but they are simply incapable of unleashing a Medaforce or a Medaforce nuke, all the same until the seal is removed, such as, say, from Stat Cleanse. Biped legs do give First Ace relatively solid coverage on most terrains, and her stats across the board are more or less what you'd expect of most typical females to be. About 3650 for her head, about 3000 HP per arm, and about 3700 for her legs. Definitely say equal tier, little higher regular tier than normal. Her leg stats are honestly very nice too, at a mobility of 823, an evade of 1040 is pretty solid as well. A melee resist of 1159 is actually not too bad, given the fact that she is a long-range fighter and not a close-range one. Whereas in contrast, her shoot resist is at 679, which isn't really all that great, but honestly could be better in many forms and instances. The shape memory ability honestly does come as a really nice surprise for her kit though, as even if something is considered broken, all she really has to do is just charge Medaforce to get the parts back, as well as equalizing the total HP of what's still alive with what was restored. Now, First Ace is also capable of meta change, where she will shed all of her armor and basically become a marionette on invisible strings. In this kit, she changes it out entirely for a more offense-based shooting kit, with a kit of Tornado, Mirror Guard, Slip, her leg type to float, and her leg ability to trigger Happy, which buffs all leg stats, minus of course armor and heavy limit, for every critical hit scored by a shooting skill. Now honestly, her leg stats even before the buffs of Trigger Happy are going to be really nice too, as she's packing about 881 in terms of her mobility, 956 for her melee resist, 1232 for her shoot, and 1556 for her evade. And these honestly will go up relative to the number of critical hits that she scores. But with her kit, she can honestly do that moderately easy. Tornado is a paralyzed-based ailment, and honestly the more stranger of the few that we have. As simply put, when it attacks a target, it will suspend them in mid-air for a short amount of time, but also render them susceptible to an anti-air attack, such as, say, Gun Desperado, or Shafu, or even Golf Bullet as essentially the Magikarp of Medarot as he is, and make them essentially so much more powerful while they are suspended in midair. As a drawback to this particular skill, however, Tornado also is the lowest, has the lowest duration compared to most other ailment skills, such as, say, Shock or Freeze Shot, and so on. Mirror Guard is a defense-based skill that, as long as First Ace is on the line, she will intercept any and all incoming shooting attacks and return them back to sender at half of the total intended damage. Now, much like as mentioned with Gan King, where supposedly meta change forms are immune to anyone that is using Destroy, this will allow First Ace an advantage over anyone that is using shoot-based skills that want to try to counteract it with Destroy and try to maybe catch her off guard. Well, catching off guard is essentially First Ace's main party trick and more or less the master of such, as well with Slip, where when attacking a target, if you catch them in their heat phase, it will force them to turn around and start their cooldown right where they left off, as well as render them open to being unable to dodge or defend, and make any attack land and any attack be a crit on top of that. The float legs also do grant, in this form anyway, First Ace a much better mobility across most terrains very easily, as well as with her Trigger Happy ability allowing her to get even faster and more much so a pain in the neck. As a pure set score, I honestly have to rate First Ace a pretty solid 6.5 out of 10. and in some cases arguments could even be made for a 7, depending on how you choose to use her. While force control and field control may not be super handy by themselves, it's mostly the meta change for the skills with Tornado and Slip, or even Mirror Guard in some cases, where she really does shine. Where one of her biggest weaknesses, of course, and drawbacks of her meta change form is that all 3 skills are required to have CG in order to use them, which means it will force you to switch back and forth between the two, depending on how you want to use her and how you use her. As mixed parts, on the other hand, I have to rate her lower at a 6 out of 10, given that you are missing out on Tornado and Slip, as well as more or less a Destroy Immune Mirror Guard if you choose to mix up her parts, and by themselves, even if her legs ability of Shape Memory is actually really good, Force Control is kind of redundant to have on both arms, and Field Control is honestly very, very niche at best, depending on how well you are matched with the terrains, except in very specific circumstances.